I am disheveled. I am broken. I am very sick. But we have a race to talk about. So let's do that. Let's just roll the intro. Just roll the intro. And welcome back to the Spin Move iRacing Network. My name is Zach, and I'm over here with my buddy David. Say hello to the internet, David.
Hello, welcome back, everyone. Glad to be alongside you, Zach. Wishing you a speedy recovery from your illness here, as it was alluded to a little bit yesterday. A little bit of COVID bringing you down. So hopefully we can get you back to full health and get you feeling well again.
Well, we have a show to do, so let's do the show. We didn't get the opportunity to do the pre-race show of the Ghost 200 at Kansas, but there is certainly a lot to talk about here in our featured league on the Spin Move iRacing Network's featured league race recap show. We're going to be talking about this race as it was quite a good one to watch on ESPN with our good friends at SRN broadcasting that event, making sure that a lot of people can tune in to a great race that had a lot of 2 and 3 wide battles, that had green flag runs, that had pit strategies, that had a surprise winner, and we're going to talk about all of that here on the show. As you see here on our rundown, we are going to be taking a look at our top finishers, also our point standings, who's chasing who here in the Ghost Racing Cup Series. Also, we're going to break down just how important tires were during this race. We didn't get to touch on it in a pre-race show, but Kansas definitely is a track that eats good years and spits them out, and drivers definitely felt that during this race. So, talking about how tires definitely affected some folks, but also tire strategy played into quite a number of our top 10 finishers here on our show. We're going to cover that. Also, we're going to talk about a newcomer, a name that you've not seen before here on the show, and you've not seen in the broadcasts for this series. Stepping in to a vacant slot here in this league and taking the league by storm. Does this league have a new challenger for the championship? Can he make a mad dash to the playoff 16? We'll have to talk about and speculate about that here on the show. And then ultimately, what's our takeaways from this league as they leave Kansas and move on to other adventures for the season. So, David, we're going to take a look here at the top finishers. Here's a rundown of guys that made their way through Kansas and wound up finishing in the top 10. Want to take a look here? We got a new face here, a new driver, and a new number 54, finishing up front. Tate making a great first impression on this league. Kind of walk us through from a driver's perspective. What did he look like out there? It wasn't all roses for him throughout this race. He definitely had his fair share of issues.
It certainly wasn't all roses for him, but I will say that all night long, Tate was fast. He was working his way to the front when he wasn't up there. And when he was up near the front, it just seemed like he had the race car to beat, making those moves. Again, we mentioned there was 2 wide, 3 wide racing. And at times, there were even points on the track where you saw 4 cars going side by side battling for it. Tate really found a way to keep his car clean enough and keep that speed in the car in order to secure the win here. And man, what a great job to him. New guy to the league, not sure how to kind of race around some of these drivers as our other drivers are already used to racing with each other. He came in here, figured it out real quick, and made his way straight to the front.
Yeah, first impressions. Talk about, making a good one. And you don't really have to worry about racing against other drivers if you just finish first. And so Tate did that in the number 54 machine. David, as we go through the top 10 here, what's a few names that stick out to you in particular that make some good stories here as we take a glimpse at the top 10 from Kansas?
There is one name in particular. Super glad to see him up here. Little rough this season. He does have a top 10 so far throughout the season, but that is Mr. Hubka, the league admin himself. Great to see that number 5 Chevy Camaro make its way up towards the front of the field and get a good finish. He has a ton of time in this league and a lot of other stuff going on. Last week, he was unable to make the race due to some other commitments he has with work. Uh, Great to see him hop back in that rig, get out on the track, and secure a top 10 finish.
Yeah, really good effort there by Hupka. Had quite a bit of unfortunate luck at some races. Managed to dodge a few wrecks at the end and snagged a solid sixth place finish. There's a couple drivers here that I want to make mention of. I already made fun of you last week because you finished 11th and that was a career best for you. But if we take a look up here on the screen, there you are, finishing 8th. Good job, buddy. A career best finish, and we'll talk a little bit more about your night from a driver's perspective later on. But I just wanted to tease you. You're up there, so I can talk about you now. I'm not breaking any rules, but I'll move off of you, and I'll go talk about the guy in the 22 machine. Substitutions have been a big topic of discussion in this league, and it's now starting to become broader a broader conversation over how can we uh, monitor substitute drivers, new drivers. Right, we got a new driver up top winning, and then to bookend the top 10, we have a fill-in driver, Owens, filling in for Sabanowski, and he raced as clean of a race as you could and willed that 22 machine to a top 10 finishing position. A very interesting storyline coming out of the 22 camp with Owens filling that machine.
For sure. And Owens, I believe, is the owner of the team with
Yep.
Sabanovsky on it. So, as him filling in as a driver, we've raced with him before.
Mm-hmm.
The league admin, Chris Hubka, knows Mr. Owens. So, to see him come into the league, I don't think that was a big surprise. But for sure, we've had other drivers in the field where we may not know the driver that was coming in to fill for them. How do we monitor that? How do we keep that fair? I think the best way to do that is to limit the number of substitutions in a season, but ultimately that comes down to the league admin. Or if you see a driver that has a substitution, 1 or 2 races that are well above the average finish of the driver is absolutely fine. It's perfectly likely that even if that driver did race, they might have had a great week and had that great finish. But if they're consistently getting finishes that are better, I think we have to look at, is this really fair to the rest of the league that this driver may be abusing that sub and pulling them in to help boost their points and earn that spot closer to playoff time?
Yeah, so definitely something for this league or any league to look for. As commentators, we have to take a step back and pull ourselves out of those conversations and go, hey, look, the data's right here. Very interesting storyline though to put to put lightly. You have a fill-in driver putting a really solid effort. I can't imagine Rick Hendrick or climbing into a race car going, yeah, don't worry about it, Bowman. I'm gonna pilot the 48 this week. Uh, that's what Owens did, and kudos to him. He showed up. He made sure that he made a commitment in the beginning of the year. Though I remember him going, I want to focus on you know developing drivers, and I want to focus on putting good drivers in these rides, and he's doing a good job. And then he's also showed as an owner, I could still beat you around this racetrack if I really wanted to. So good storyline there. Let's move on from top finishers and take a look here at points. They're still chasing Spies here in this league. Nothing really too much to talk about, really, David, other than the fact that the points are starting to widen out. We see the gap between first and 10th now sits at 245, and I think Really, we're going to have to start talking about the fact that the drivers that are up here are drivers that are finishing consistently in stages, grabbing stage points and bonus points when they can, and uh, they they minimize their bad days, and we're starting to see the cream rise to the top.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, the gap is now widening between those leaders, and fourth on back is starting to get to a point where, as this season continues, they're really going to have to prioritize those bonus points, those stage points, and making sure that they get as many points as possible to keep within the top 16. Looking down at that cut line as I was doing points today for the website, I noticed that 16th place and 17th place. How close do you think that cut really is, Zach?
I really don't know.
There is 1 point that currently separates 16th and 17th.
Hmm.
That cut line is going to be super hot and super important as we get down to these last couple of weeks. We're at week 7 right now, which puts us at about the midpoint on our run up to the playoffs. And as we look into it, these drivers are starting to settle in, really find out where they're racing. But those drivers that are right there at midfield at that cut line mark, as I said, super close. The difference right now between being in and being out, a single point.
Hmm.
Could be made up by a bonus point, could be made up by a 10th place finish for just one stage.
Yeah.
So, as we mentioned, these points super important to take advantage of anywhere you can get them.
Absolutely. And really excited to start covering the playoff push here in the next few weeks with you on this show. We just cover the top 10 here just to show the guys who are up front, but obviously the narrative is going to start changing as the playoffs come around. So let's get rid of the points here and take a look back here at a rundown. We've been through our top finishers and our point standings, but David, this race featured a lot of tire strategy, and Kansas is a track where drivers really have to monitor their stuff. It's a slippery surface, and it does get more treacherous as the run goes on, and we saw that from drivers. Drivers starting on the low line and then kind of easing up to that high line as the tire fall off happened, just trying to generate as much speed as possible. It was really interesting to see the different strategies play out. I myself didn't have a lot of opportunities to see a lot of anything because I was involved in a lap one incident. Excuse me. Tried really hard to make the whole video, but the reality is it was going to happen. So regardless, uh, I was involved in a lap one incident. I chugged around in the back of the field for about 130 laps, not seeing a whole lot of anybody. But you were in the middle of the action with tire strategy. So kind of unpack that for us here at Kansas.
It was very interesting as these runs developed early on in the race. We had a couple of quick cautions right off the start that set the tone for the field that maybe tires weren't going to be as important as originally thought at the start of the race. But after the third caution, I think it was, we had a long green flag run leading up to the end of the stage. As we got down to the end of the stage, everybody was on the same page when it came down to, I want a pit and I want tires. And we went into the pits. Everybody came back out, as you mentioned, kind of developing those lines at the start of stage 2. Where do I want to start running my car, and how am I going to ensure I have enough to finish this race, as drivers had one less set of tires than we're used to in that pit box. So a little bit of strategy there to try to manage that, maybe save one set for a late race caution. And what ended up happening is a lot of stage 2 was a green flag run. So you saw these drivers that went out, pushed their car super hard, and burned up all those tires early. And then you saw some of those drivers that were able to save a little bit more and then start picking their way up through the field as the stage came to a finish. The big story came in stage 3. It was around a lap 106 or 107. There was a caution that came out, and it was right on the edge of both the fuel window and where we had seen these drivers really comfortable with picking up a new set of tires and then running it all the way out to the end. This was a 150 lap race for us, so that would put you at 44 to 43 lap old tires come the end of the race if we would have finished under the scheduled 150 laps. We had two green white checkers. I think we ended up running 157. I was one of those drivers that at 107, I have a fuel calculator. And I'm doing the math, I'm watching it. My pit light turns green right as we come to the start finish line of that caution. Went in, grabbed my tires, grabbed my fuel, hopped on the radio with you, Zach, and I said, if this goes green, I think I can make it. And as we got through that run, as we got towards the end, you were watching this strategy play out with a couple of other drivers that had pit around me on that stage. And we all ran to the end. And as we started getting towards that finishing mark, I think it was around lap 120, maybe 130, somewhere in that range, there was another caution, and the entire field, except for four drivers, I want to say it was, went in to grab that final set of tires, that final fuel stop, and push to the end. And man, the drivers that took that gamble with me, it was hard to stay up front, and you noticed the loss of grip. But when you were in that clean air, you also had the advantage of being able to pick your line and stay in front of those drivers on fresh tires, which made for a really great finish to this race.
Yeah, and it was wild. I mean, we definitely had different layers of strategy going on. Ultimately, I think how that last stage played out, like four guys went with you, and then there was another break, and then I went, and then probably about, I would say five or six guys went with me, and then there was a break, and then a large portion of the field went on the next break, and it really developed three tiers of cars that had different levels of tires, and some guys that were up front towards the end weren't up front all day, and myself being one of them. I mean, I was I was in 33rd most of the race. I don't even know where I finished. I think I finished like 33rd, to be honest, getting caught up in junk there at the end. But regardless, the fact of the matter is that this is the kind of race that produces this kind of electrifying setup to the end, where drivers can move with strategy, and if you can survive, if you can manage 50 lap old tires, you might be able to snag a top 10 finish, and you were one of those guys, and there were a couple other guys that managed to do that. We talked about Chris Hupka earlier, right? He dodged a couple wrecks, but he was part of that group that grabbed tires at the end, so he was on different strategy. Well, he's moving his way up through the field, and he got himself a season best finish. So very good to see kind of these different strategies play out on a day where this league really needed a good race. We saw 2 and 3 wide racing. We saw different pit strategies play into a factor. It wasn't the cleanest race, but it definitely by far was probably one of the most entertaining races that the Ghost Racing Cup Series put on. One of the reasons why it was so entertaining, David, is because we got a new driver sweeping the nation here. He came very highly recommended. Tate comes into this league no stranger to a lot of these drivers, but he might be a stranger for a lot of our viewing audience that takes a look at this league through ESPN, through SRM, sponsored by ESPN, and that's a new face that these guys aren't really used to seeing. And yet the 54 machine was up most of the day. He had some issues in the middle of the race that caused him to take damage and fall back through the field. Methodically worked his way back up and snagged the win. What does this league look like now with possibly a new driver taking this league by storm?
As we have listed up there, new driver, new challenger. But I will caveat that with this. As a new challenger, he's coming into this race, as I said earlier. We're looking at week 8 coming up now. We're about halfway through our run down to that playoff stretch. He has a lot of ground to make up if he wants to find himself up in contention for at least a spot in that top 16. New driver, I would say new challenge.
Hmm.
This driver has to be on the top of his game every week, making sure that he earns stage points, bonus points, and gets that high finish in order to make his way up to the playoffs to really be that challenger for the playoff title.
Yeah, and what a story that would be, right? So all eyes are going to be on him as he tries to string together kind of this iconic run, right? It's the storyline's there. It's set up in front of him. Can he do it? Can he muster that? We talked about that with Daniel, right? Coming back from being away in the 96 machine and stepping back into the rig, and we said, this guy's really quick, and he's won in this league, and he but he hasn't quite put together the run that he needs to make up that ground. Here's a new guy who steps right in and takes it, and doesn't apologize for it. And the reality is that he could very well keep doing that as the season rolls along. Man, would that be a storyline worth talking about?
Absolutely. And, you know, best of luck. And as I said, new driver, I would say new challenge.
Mm. So, David, what's your takeaway from the Ghost 200 at Kansas as we move away from this and look forward into the season?
Looking forward, my takeaway from Kansas is we had those longer green flag runs. We had 3 wide racing at some points up to 4 wide. I would love to see these drivers really take all those things, put them together, and let's really work on cutting down those incidents overall, the cautions, and just having a fun, clean race. The radio this week, we didn't mention it yet in this broadcast, but it was rather quiet. Drivers minding their P's and Q's and only talking to race control when they needed to. It was honestly refreshing from a driver's standpoint. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts, Zach.
Yeah, and it was good because going over through the broadcast, um, a great feature that I like on SRM's broadcast is that they bring in Greg Wood, the RC of this, into the broadcast booth, and he kind of explains like, hey, this is an EOL situation. This is what happened during the flags. This is who's getting a wave around, and he kind of gives a little bit of commentary of what's going on in the race. And I think when driver chatter on the radio is to a minimum, he can do that, and he can bring more life into the broadcast, into the commentary. And I think we got to see that. There was a lot of positive reviews about the broadcast this week. Not that the guys at SRM aren't doing a fantastic job, which they are. It's just when they bring in that extra element of a guy who's on the inside in, it is really refreshing to watch that perspective. So I'm very curious to see if that's a correlation, if driver chatter on the radio inhibits him from jumping out of RC and into the broadcast. Like, if drivers keep the chatter down, will the broadcast keep elevating? And if that's not an endorsement to watch these guys each Wednesday, I don't know what is. So regardless, my name is Zach, and for my partner David, it's been a pleasure recapping the Ghost Racing Cup series with you. And until we meet again, just remember to keep on racing.